At the hospital, my son looked the doctor in the eye and said, "Don't save her." The whole room froze. The heart monitor's frantic beeping pierced the silence. Two nurses stopped mid-step, their hands still gripping medical equipment. The young resident's face went white. Even the janitor in the corner put down his mop and stared. But the worst part, I heard every single word. I lay there on that cold hospital bed, barely conscious, my body screaming in pain, and I listened to my own child, the boy I raised, fed, clothed, and sacrificed everything for, tell trained medical professionals not to save my life. The oxygen mask fogged with each shallow breath I took. My vision blurred, but I could see Darren standing there in his expensive suit, arms crossed, looking at me like I was already a corpse. My younger son, Ethan, shifted nervously behind him, unable to meet my eyes. "Sir, I need to clarify," the doctor stammered, his hands trembling slightly. "Are you saying you don't want us to proceed with life-saving measures for your mother?" Darren didn't even hesitate. "That's exactly what I'm saying. She's 68 years old. She's had a good run. We can't afford the medical bills, and honestly, it's her time to go." The words hit me harder than the chest pain that brought me here. This wasn't a medical emergency anymore. This was my execution. A nurse dropped her clipboard. It clattered against the linoleum floor like thunder. "But sir," she whispered, "her vitals are stabilizing. With surgery she could—" "No surgery," Darren cut her off. "Do whatever's cheapest. Make her comfortable, but don't waste resources trying to extend this. Extend this. Like my life was nothing more than an inconvenience." The room spun around me. Through the haze of medication and shock, one thought crystal clear. This is how my own son wants me to die. Alone, unwanted, discarded. The doctor looked around the room helplessly. I need a moment to consult with my colleagues." As he rushed out, Darren checked his watch like he had somewhere more important to be. Ethan finally spoke up, his voice barely a whisper. "Maybe we should—" "Should what?" Darren snapped. "She's a drain on everyone. She's served her purpose." Those words echoed in my ears as the darkness started to creep in around the edges of my vision. But something inside me, call it stubborn pride, call it survival instinct, refused to let go. Have you ever felt betrayed by family when you needed them most? Keep watching, because this story gets worse before it gets better. Let me tell you who I really am, so you understand why those words in that hospital room cut so deep. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 68 years old, a widow, and until that moment I thought I was a loving mother to 2 sons. But I wasn't always lying helpless in a hospital bed. 30 years ago I was a young wife with dreams. My husband Marcus and I had just bought our first little house. Nothing fancy, just 900 square feet with a leaky roof and creaky floors. But it was ours. Then everything changed. Marcus died in a factory accident when I was only 38 years old. One morning he kissed me goodbye, and by evening I was a widow with 2 boys to raise, Darren, who was 12, and little Ethan, just 8. The insurance payout was a joke, barely enough to cover the funeral. I had no college degree, no wealthy family to fall back on, and 2 hungry mouths depending on me. So I did what mothers do. I sacrificed everything. I took 2 jobs. During the day, I cleaned office buildings downtown, scrubbing toilets and emptying trash cans for minimum wage. At night, I worked as a nurse's assistant at the local hospital, changing bed sheets and feeding patients who couldn't feed themselves. 22 years. That's how long I worked those double shifts, coming home exhausted at 6 a.m. only to make breakfast and get the boys ready for school. I never bought new clothes for myself. I wore the same 3 dresses for years, patching holes and mending tears until they fell apart. Every dollar I earned went to my sons. When Darren wanted to play football in high school, I paid for his equipment, $300 I didn't have. When Ethan needed glasses, I skipped meals for 2 weeks to afford them. College? I made it happen. Darren's tuition at State University, $42,000 over 4 years. Ethan's degree cost me $33,000. That's $75,000 total. Money I earned by working nights while other people slept, by cleaning up other people's messes, by saying no to every small pleasure I might have wanted. But it didn't stop there. When Darren graduated and wanted to start his own construction business, he came to me with those puppy dog eyes he'd perfected as a child. "Mum, I just need startup capital. $20,000. I'll pay you back with interest." I emptied my retirement savings account. $20,000, my entire safety net gone. Did he pay me back? You already know the answer. When Ethan got married, I paid for half the wedding because his future in-laws would judge us if it looked cheap. Another $8,000 from my savings. I never took a real vacation, never bought myself jewellery, never even got my teeth fixed properly, because there was always something the boys needed more. For 30 years, I lived in that same little house Marcus and I bought, watching the paint peel and the roof leak, because every spare penny went to my children. I told myself it was worth it. I told myself that's what good mothers do. I told myself that someday, when I was old and needed help, they would remember everything I'd given them. I thought I was building love. I thought I was building loyalty. Instead, I was building my own prison. Because now, lying in this hospital bed, listening to my eldest son tell doctors to let me die, I realised the truth. I didn't raise sons who loved me. I raised entitled men who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. And when the account finally ran dry, they were ready to close it forever. The first time I realised I wasn't their mother anymore, just their servant, was on my 65th birthday. I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there, like cracks in a foundation that you ignore until the whole house collapses. It started 3 weeks before my birthday, when I casually mentioned to Darren that I was looking forward to celebrating with the family. Nothing fancy. Maybe dinner at that little Italian place where Marcus used to take me, or even just cake at someone's house. Darren's response? "Yeah, we'll figure something out, Mum." Figure something out. Like I was a problem to be solved instead of a mother turning 65. But I held on to hope. Surely after everything I'd given them, they'd want to celebrate this milestone with me. 65 felt significant, retirement age, social security kicking in, the official start of my golden years. Golden years, what a joke. The day arrived on a Tuesday. I woke up in my empty house, made myself coffee, and waited for the phone to ring. Surely someone would call. By noon, nothing. No calls, no visitors, no flowers. I told myself they were planning a surprise. They were just running late. At 3 p.m, Darren finally called. "Hey Mum, happy birthday. Listen, we're having a little gathering at my house tonight. Can you come around 5 and maybe bring some of those dinner rolls you make? We're running short on food." My heart jumped. A gathering. They hadn't forgotten after all. I spent the next 2 hours baking fresh rolls, showering and putting on my nicest dress, a navy blue one I'd bought 3 years ago for Ethan's wedding. I even applied lipstick, something I rarely bothered with anymore. I arrived at Darren's house at exactly 5 p.m, warm rolls in hand, ready to be celebrated. But the moment I walked through the door, I knew something was wrong. The living room was packed with people I didn't recognise. Expensive suits, designer handbags, the smell of costly perfume filling the air. These were Darren's new business associates and his wife Miranda's wealthy family, the people he'd been trying so desperately to impress ever since his construction company started making money. Miranda rushed over, but instead of a birthday hug, she grabbed the rolls from my hands and whispered urgently, "Thank God you brought food. We're running low." Then she looked me up and down with barely concealed horror. "Oh, Evelyn, you're wearing that dress." I looked down at my navy blue dress, the nicest thing I owned. "Is something wrong with it?" "It's just..." She glanced around nervously at her elegant guests. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable in the kitchen. You know, helping with the food. My mother-in-law is here from the country club, and she's very traditional about mixing social circles." The words hit me like a slap. Mixing social circles. As if I was some stranger who'd wandered in off the street. "Miranda, it's my birthday party." Her smile was plastic. "Of course. And we're so grateful you could help out. The kitchen is through there." Before I could protest, she steered me toward the kitchen, away from the laughter and conversation in the living room. I found myself standing next to the sink, surrounded by dirty dishes and half-empty serving trays, while my own birthday party happened without me in the next room. Through the doorway, I could see Darren schmoozing with a man in a $1,000 suit, gesturing wildly as he talked about his latest construction project. My son looked handsome and successful in his tailored shirt and expensive watch, the watch I'd given him for Christmas last year, paid for with my cleaning job wages. Ethan was there too, nodding along with everything Darren said, playing the supportive younger brother. He caught sight of me through the doorway and gave a weak wave, but made no move to come talk to me. "Excuse me," a sharp voice behind me said. "Are you the help?" I turned around to face a woman dripping in diamonds, Miranda's mother, Mrs. Wellington. She looked like she'd stepped out of a country club magazine, all perfect hair and condescending smile. "I'm Evelyn," I said, "Darren's mother." Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "Oh. Well, could you refresh the cheese platter? And maybe wipe down these counters? They're looking a bit spotty." For a moment I just stood there, rolls still warm in my hands, staring at this woman who was ordering me around at my own birthday party. "I'm sorry, did you just ask me to clean?" "Well, someone needs to. Miranda mentioned you were helping with the catering tonight." Catering. My own birthday party, and I was the caterer. I looked back into the living room where my sons were entertaining strangers, where no one had mentioned it was my birthday, where I'd been shuffled into the kitchen like an embarrassment to be hidden away. That's when it truly hit me. I wasn't a guest at this party. I wasn't even family. I was free labor. Mrs. Wellington was still waiting for me to clean her counters. Instead, I set down the rolls, walked to the sink, and began washing dishes. Because that's what I'd been trained to do for 30 years, serve everyone else while my own needs disappeared. As I scrubbed plates that other people had used to eat food I'd helped prepare, I could hear fragments of conversation from the next room. Darren's doing so well for himself. Such a lovely home. He's really made something of his life. No one mentioned the woman in the kitchen who'd made it all possible. Around 8 p.m, someone finally remembered I existed. Miranda appeared in the doorway holding a small grocery store cake, the cheap kind with the plastic roses. "Oh, we should do the birthday thing," she announced to the room. They all filed into the kitchen where I stood, still wearing my apron, hands pruned from dishwater. Darren stuck a single candle in the cake. One candle. For my 65th birthday. "Make a wish, Mom," he said, already looking at his watch. I looked around at the faces surrounding me, my sons, their wives, their important friends, all of them waiting for this awkward obligation to be over so they could get back to their real conversations. As I blew out that pathetic single candle, I made a wish. I wished I could disappear. After the cake, the guests drifted back to the living room. I continued cleaning up, invisible again. By 10 p.m, people started leaving. Nobody said goodbye to me. I was still scrubbing pots when Darren finally approached. "Thanks for helping out tonight, Mum. The rolls were great. Oh, and Miranda wanted me to ask, could you take the leftover dishes home and wash them? Our dishwasher's acting up." I stared at him. My son, my firstborn. The boy I'd rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bike, worked double shifts to send to college. "Darren, it was my birthday." He looked confused. "Yeah, I know. Happy birthday. So about those dishes." That night I drove home with a car full of dirty dishes that weren't mine, leftover cake that nobody wanted, and the devastating realization that I had become a stranger in my own family. I sat in my dark kitchen at midnight, still wearing that navy blue dress, and cried for the first time since Marcus died. Should children respect their parents no matter what? Or do some parents earn the right to be discarded? Tell me below, because I'm still trying to figure out where I went wrong. After the birthday humiliation, I thought things couldn't get worse. I was wrong. 3 months later, on a grey October morning, Darren showed up at my door unannounced. But he wasn't alone. Standing next to him was a man in a charcoal suit carrying a leather briefcase, The kind of briefcase that screams expensive lawyer. The man's smile was sharp as a knife, and his eyes calculated the value of everything they touched. "Morning, Mum," Darren said, pushing past me into my living room like he owned the place. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever started with, "We need to talk," especially not when lawyers were involved. The man extended a manicured hand. "Mrs. Carter, I'm Robert Blackwood from Blackwood Associates. I represent your son in various business matters." I shook his hand reluctantly, feeling like I was making a deal with the devil. "What kind of business matters?" Darren was already pacing around my living room, examining the old furniture, the faded wallpaper, the family photos that hadn't been updated in years. He picked up a framed picture of Marcus and me from our wedding day, studied it for a moment, then set it down like it was worthless. "Mum, we need to discuss your living situation," he said, not meeting my eyes. "My living situation? I live in my house, the house your father and I bought." "That's exactly the problem," Blackwood interrupted smoothly. "Mrs. Carter, your son is concerned about your financial future. Property taxes, maintenance costs, utility bills. These expenses are only going to increase as you age." I felt like prey being circled by predators. "I manage my expenses just fine." Darren finally stopped pacing and turned to face me. "Do you, Mum? Really? Because from where I'm standing, you're house poor. This place is falling apart. The roof leaks, the furnace is ancient, and you're spending money you don't have trying to maintain something you can't afford." Each word felt like a physical blow. Yes, the house needed repairs. Yes, money was tight. But this was my home. The place where I'd raised my children, where Marcus and I had planned to grow old together. Blackwood opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "We have a solution that benefits everyone involved." "What kind of solution?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "A transfer of property ownership," he said, spreading the documents across my coffee table like he was dealing cards. "You would sign the house over to Darren for tax purposes and estate planning benefits. In exchange, he would handle all maintenance, repairs, and property taxes going forward." I stared at the papers, my vision blurring. "Sign over my house?" "It's really the smartest move," Darren added quickly. "Think about it, Mum. You wouldn't have to worry about property taxes anymore. No more stress about fixing the roof or replacing the furnace. I'd take care of everything." "But where would I live?" "Here, of course," he said, like it was obvious. "Nothing changes except the paperwork. You'd still live here, but legally, the house would be mine. Nothing changes except everything, except my independence, except my security, except the one thing Marcus left me that couldn't be taken away." Or so I thought. Blackwood leaned forward, his voice taking on that practiced tone lawyers use when they're about to screw you. "Mrs. Carter, we need to be realistic about your situation. You're 68 years old, living alone in a deteriorating property. What happens if you fall and break a hip? What happens if you develop dementia and can't make sound financial decisions?" "I'm perfectly capable of making my own decisions." "Are you?" Darren's voice turned sharp. "Because last month you forgot to pay the electric bill, and 2 weeks ago you called me confused about your bank statement." He was right about the electric bill. I'd been overwhelmed with medical bills and it had slipped through the cracks. And yes, I'd called about my bank statement because the numbers didn't look right. But forgetting one bill and asking for help didn't make me incompetent. "Darren, this house is all I have." "And that's exactly why you need to protect it," Blackwood interjected. "If something happens to you, a medical emergency, long-term care needs, the state could put liens on this property. You could lose everything. But if it's in your son's name, it's protected." Protected from me, I realised. They wanted to protect my house from me. "I need time to think about this," I said, my hands shaking as I pushed the papers away. Darren's patience evaporated. "Time to think about what, Mum? This is a gift. I'm offering to take on all the financial burden of this house and you're acting like I'm trying to rob you." "Aren't you?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. The room went silent except for the ticking of the old grandfather clock Marcus had inherited from his father. Darren's face darkened. "Excuse me? You want me to sign over the deed to my house? How is that not robbery?" "Because," his voice rose to a shout, "you wouldn't even have this house if I didn't exist. Everything you have, everything you've ever had, came from the sacrifices I made. Do you think Dad's life insurance would have been enough? Do you think your minimum wage jobs would have paid for this place?" I stared at my son, this man who looked like the boy I'd raised but spoke like a stranger. "What sacrifices did you make, Darren? You were 12 when your father died." "I sacrificed having a normal childhood. I sacrificed having a mother who wasn't always exhausted and stressed. I sacrificed having nice things because every dollar went to keeping this dump running." His words hit me like physical blows. Everything I'd done to keep us together, every double shift I'd worked, every luxury I'd denied myself. In his mind, those weren't sacrifices I'd made for him. They were sacrifices he'd made because of me. "You owe me, Mum," he continued, his voice cold as winter. "For 30 years I watched you struggle to maintain something you couldn't afford. Now I'm successful enough to take that burden off your shoulders, and you're too proud to accept help." "This isn't help, Darren. This is theft." Blackwood cleared his throat diplomatically. "Perhaps we should give Mrs. Carter some time to review the documents. These are big decisions." "No," Darren said firmly. "She's going to sign today, or we'll explore other options." "Other options?" "Competency hearings, guardianship proceedings. If you're not mentally capable of making sound financial decisions, the court can appoint someone to make them for you." The threat hung in the air like poison gas. I felt the walls of my own home closing in around me. "You would do that to me?" "I would do whatever it takes to protect you from yourself." But I could see it in his eyes. This wasn't about protecting me. This was about protecting his inheritance. About making sure the house that I'd worked 2 jobs to maintain would end up in his hands, not in the hands of creditors or nursing homes or medical bills. I looked at the papers scattered across my coffee table, at the lawyer with his practiced smile, at my son who was willing to destroy me to get what he wanted. "Get out," I whispered. "Mum, get out," I screamed, surprising myself with the strength of my voice. "Both of you, get out of my house." Blackwood calmly gathered his papers. "We'll be in touch, Mrs. Carter. These matters don't resolve themselves." Darren paused in the doorway. "You're making a mistake, Mum. A big one." After they left, I sat in my empty living room, shaking with rage and fear. For the first time since Marcus died, I felt completely alone. But I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. 2 weeks later, I went to withdraw money from my checking account and nearly fainted when I saw the balance, $200. The account that had contained $3,400 in savings was almost empty. When I called the bank, they informed me that electronic transfers had been made to an account belonging to Darren Carter, transfers that required someone with access to my account information. I called Ethan, desperate for answers. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "Darren said you'd agreed to help with some business expenses. He said you'd signed papers." "I never signed anything." He showed me documents. He said you were getting confused about money and that you'd asked him to help manage your finances. He said the transfers were approved by you." My younger son, the boy I'd protected and provided for, had helped his brother steal my life savings. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with $200 in my bank account, foreclosure notices piling up, and the devastating realization that my own children had orchestrated my destruction. But they made one mistake. They underestimated me. You see, there are things about me they never bothered to learn. Secrets I'd kept for 30 years, hidden in places they'd never think to look. And I was about to become the most dangerous thing in the world, a mother with nothing left to lose. The stress of being robbed by my own children nearly killed me. Literally. For weeks after discovering my empty bank account, I barely slept. I'd lie awake at 3 a.m. calculating and recalculating numbers that never added up. Property taxes due in 2 months, $2,100. Heating bill, $340. Groceries. Whatever was left, which wasn't much. I started skipping meals, not by choice, but because $200 doesn't stretch far when you're trying to keep a house from being foreclosed on. My neighbour, Mrs. Alvarez, knocked on my door one afternoon in late November. She was holding a casserole dish and wearing that concerned expression people get when they're about to deliver bad news. "Evelyn, you look terrible," she said, pushing past me into my kitchen. "When's the last time you ate?" I couldn't remember. Tuesday? Wednesday? The days had blurred together in a haze of anxiety and sleepless nights. "I'm fine, Rosa. Just tired." She set the casserole on my counter and turned to really look at me. "You've lost weight. Your hands are shaking. And your skin looks grey." Grey. That's exactly how I felt inside. Grey, faded, disappearing. "Have you checked your blood pressure lately?" Blood pressure. I'd been so focused on my financial crisis that I'd forgotten about my physical health. The medication I was supposed to take daily had been sitting untouched on my bathroom counter because I couldn't afford to refill the prescription. "I'm managing," I lied. Rosa wasn't buying it. "When did you last see a doctor?" 6 months ago, before my sons destroyed my savings, before I had to choose between blood pressure medication and groceries. That night, December 15th, I was standing in my kitchen trying to figure out how to make a can of soup last 3 days, when the world tilted sideways. The pain started behind my eyes, a crushing pressure like someone was squeezing my skull in a vice. Then my chest tightened, making each breath feel like drowning. I reached for the counter, but my legs gave out. I crashed to the linoleum floor, my head striking the edge of the cabinet on the way down. The ceiling spun above me in lazy circles. I could taste blood in my mouth and my left arm had gone completely numb. Heart attack. The words floated through my mind with strange clarity. This is how I die. Alone on my kitchen floor. Broke and abandoned by the children I sacrificed everything for. I tried to call out, but only a whisper escaped my lips. My cell phone was on the counter, 5 feet away, might as well have been 5 miles. Time became elastic. Minutes felt like hours as I lay there, consciousness fading in and out like a radio signal losing reception. In my delirium, I saw Marcus standing in our old kitchen, young and handsome in his work clothes, smiling at me the way he used to when we were first married. "Not yet, Evie," he seemed to say. "You're not done yet." But I felt done, exhausted, ready to give up. That's when I heard Rosa's voice through the thin walls of our adjoining houses, arguing with her teenage grandson about loud music. The sound anchored me, reminded me I wasn't completely alone. Using every ounce of strength I had left, I rolled onto my side and began crawling toward the back door. 5 feet felt like 5 miles. My vision kept going black, but I forced myself to keep moving, one hand over the other. Breathe, move, breathe, move. I managed to bang my fist against the doorframe twice before I collapsed again. Rosa found me 20 minutes later when she came to check on the noise. "Oh my God, Evelyn, stay with me, honey." The ambulance ride was a blur of sirens and worried voices. I drifted in and out, catching fragments of medical jargon. BP 190 over 120. Possible stroke. Family history? At the hospital, they rushed me into the emergency room, where a young doctor with kind eyes immediately began barking orders to nurses. "Mrs. Carter, can you hear me? I'm Dr. Rodriguez. You're having a hypertensive crisis. We need to get your blood pressure down immediately." Through the fog of medication, I managed to whisper, "My sons. Call my sons." I thought they'd rush to my bedside. I thought they'd be worried, scared, desperate to make sure their mother was okay. I was wrong. Darren arrived first, but not with the face of a concerned son. He walked into my room like he was inspecting a used car he might not want to buy. "How bad is it?" he asked Dr. Rodriguez. not even looking at me. She's stable for now, but she needs surgery. There's significant strain on her cardiovascular system. Without intervention, she's at high risk for stroke or cardiac arrest. Surgery, Darren repeated flatly. How much does that cost? Dr. Rodriguez looked confused. Sir, this is your mother. Cost shouldn't be… Everything costs something, Doctor. What are we talking here? Ballpark? I could barely speak through the oxygen mask, but I tried. Darren, he finally looked at me, but his eyes held no warmth, no concern, just cold calculation. The surgery would be around $85,000, Dr. Rodriguez said reluctantly, but her insurance should cover most of… What about recovery? Physical therapy? Long-term care? That depends on how well she responds to treatment. Ethan arrived then, looking nervous and avoiding eye contact. He stood behind Darren like a shadow, letting his older brother control the conversation. Dr. Rodriguez explained the situation again. Immediate surgery was necessary to prevent stroke or death. With proper treatment, I could recover fully and live many more years. That's when Darren said the words that shattered my world. Doctor, I need to be realistic here. My mother is 68 years old. She's been struggling financially. Her health has been declining and, frankly, the quality of life issues. Maybe it's time to consider comfort care instead of aggressive treatment. Dr. Rodriguez's face went pale. Sir, are you saying you don't want us to perform life-saving surgery? I'm saying maybe we shouldn't prolong something that's clearly coming to its natural end. She's had a good run. We can't afford these medical bills, and honestly, it might be merciful to just let nature take its course. The words hit me like physical blows. Let nature take its course. Merciful. Like I was a suffering animal that needed to be put down. But sir, a nurse interjected, with treatment, she could have years of good quality life ahead of her. Darren shrugged. Or she could have years of being a burden on everyone. Doctor, what's the cheapest option here? Make her comfortable, manage the pain, but don't waste resources trying to extend this. Extend this. Like my life was an inconvenience, a subscription service he wanted to cancel. Dr. Rodriguez looked around the room desperately. This is highly unusual. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want? Don't save her, Darren said clearly. It's her time to go. The room fell silent except for the beeping of my heart monitor, which had started racing as his words sank in. Through the oxygen mask, I found my voice. No. Everyone turned to look at me. No, I repeated, stronger this time. Do everything you can. I'm not ready to die. Darren's face twisted with annoyance. Mum, be reasonable. Get out, I whispered. What? Get out! I screamed with every ounce of strength I had left. Both of you! Get out of my room! The heart monitor screamed as my blood pressure spiked. Nurses rushed in, Dr. Rodriguez started shouting orders, and my son stood there looking more inconvenienced than concerned. As they finally left my room, I heard Darren mutter to Ethan in the hallway. This is exactly what I was afraid of. She's going to drag this out and bankrupt all of us. That night, alone in my hospital room, connected to machines that were keeping me alive, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being their victim, done being their convenient source of money and labour, done being the mother who gave everything and received nothing. If my own children wanted me dead, then the woman they thought they knew, that compliant, self-sacrificing, endlessly giving mother, would die. But someone else would take her place, someone stronger, someone who fought back. Could you forgive a child who abandoned you when you were dying? Or would you do what I did next? Comment your thoughts, because this story is about to take a turn none of us saw coming. That night in the hospital changed me at a cellular level. I lay there in the dark, listening to the steady beep of machines that were keeping me alive, machines my own son didn't want plugged in. And something fundamental shifted inside me. For 68 years I had been the accommodator, the peacekeeper, the woman who swallowed her own needs to make everyone else comfortable. I'd trained myself to be small, to take up less space, to ask for less, to expect nothing. But lying there in that hospital bed, I realized that all my selflessness had accomplished was teaching my children that I was worthless. Dr. Rodriguez came in around midnight to check on me. My blood pressure had stabilized, but I could see the concern in his eyes. "Mrs. Carter, I have to ask, do you have any other family? Any friends who could help support you through recovery?" The question should have been simple, but as I lay there trying to think of someone, anyone, who would actually care if I lived or died, the answer was devastating. "No," I whispered. "Just my sons." "I see." He made a note on my chart, and I could practically read his thoughts. Elderly woman, isolated, family wants her dead. Classic case. "Doctor, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How long do I have if I don't get the surgery?" He hesitated. "Mrs. Carter, let's focus on getting you better. Please, I need to know." He sat down in the chair next to my bed, the way doctors do when they're about to deliver bad news. "Without surgical intervention, and given the severity of your cardiovascular damage, maybe 6 months, maybe less." 6 months. Half a year to live, and my children were hoping I wouldn't take even that long. But with surgery and proper follow-up care, you could have 10, 15 years of good quality life ahead of you. 10 to 15 years. Enough time to see grandchildren grow up if I had any relationship with them. Enough time to travel, to read books, to plant a garden. Enough time to matter to someone somewhere. Then we do the surgery. "Are you sure? Your sons seemed—" "My sons," I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice, "don't get to decide when I die." The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I caught a glimpse of Darren and Ethan in the waiting area. They looked like mourners at a funeral, resigned, somber, checking their watches, waiting for it to be over. I went under anesthesia with one thought burning in my mind. I will survive this. Not for them, but in spite of them. The surgery took 6 hours. When I woke up, Dr. Rodriguez was smiling. "Perfect success, Mrs. Carter. Your heart is strong, your blood pressure is responding beautifully to medication, and your prognosis is excellent." Excellent. When was the last time anyone had used that word to describe anything about me? "When can I go home?" "A few more days for observation, then you'll need several weeks of rest and recovery." "Do you have someone who can help you at home?" I almost laughed. Help me at home? The people who'd been living in my house without permission, stealing my money, trying to take my property. Were they going to help me recover? "I'll manage on my own." That afternoon, Rosa came to visit. Sweet Rosa, who'd saved my life by finding me on my kitchen floor. She brought flowers from her garden and tears in her eyes. "I was so scared, Evelyn. When I found you—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "You saved my life, Rosa, literally." "How are your boys handling all this?" I looked toward the door where Darren and Ethan had appeared briefly earlier, staying just long enough to confirm I was alive before leaving again. "They're handling it exactly like I expected them to." Rosa was quiet for a moment. Then, "Evelyn, I need to tell you something. While you were in surgery, I saw that lawyer at your house again. He was with your oldest boy and they were looking through your windows, walking around the property like they were measuring it." My blood pressure monitor started beeping faster. They were evaluating my house while I was having heart surgery. "It looked like it. I'm sorry, honey. I didn't want to upset you, but I thought you should know." After Rosa left, I lay in my hospital bed staring at the ceiling tiles, feeling something I hadn't felt in decades, pure, clean rage. They were so confident I would die that they were already planning what to do with my property. Well, I had news for them. That evening, a social worker came to discuss my discharge plans. Her name was Jennifer, and she had the efficient compassion of someone who'd seen too many elderly people abandoned by their families. "Mrs. Carter, I understand you'll be going home alone. Do you have adequate support for your recovery period?" "I have neighbours who care about me. That's more than I can say for my sons." She made notes. "I'm going to be frank with you. Based on what I observed today, I'm concerned about your family dynamics. Your sons seem more interested in your financial situation than your health. You notice that too? It's more common than you'd think. Adult children who see aging parents as burdens rather than people. Sometimes they even try to expedite the process. Like what Darren had tried to do by telling doctors not to save me. What can I do about it? Jennifer leaned forward. Protect yourself. Document everything. Make sure your legal affairs are in order. And don't let anyone pressure you into signing documents you don't understand. After she left, I lay there thinking about documentation, about legal affairs, about things I'd hidden away years ago and never told my sons about. Marcus had always been careful about paperwork, methodical. He'd left me more than just a leaky house and tragic memories. He'd left me weapons. The next day, Dr. Rodriguez cleared me for discharge. I was weak but determined, armed with new medications and a fierce will to live that I hadn't felt in years. Rosa picked me up from the hospital. As we drove toward my house, I saw Darren's truck in my driveway. "Want me to keep driving?" Rosa asked. "No, take me home. It's time to remind them whose house this really is." I walked through my front door to find Darren and Miranda going through my mail at my kitchen table. Bills, bank statements, insurance documents, everything spread out like they were conducting an estate sale. "Oh good, you're back," Darren said without looking up. "We need to discuss some financial realities while you were getting your little vacation at the hospital." Little vacation. I'd had major surgery, and he called it a vacation. "Get out of my house." Miranda looked up, startled. "Evelyn, we were just trying to help organise your bills. I said get out. Both of you." Darren finally looked at me, and for the first time in months I saw something like uncertainty in his eyes. The woman standing in front of him wasn't the same broken, compliant mother he'd left dying in a hospital bed. "Mum, be reasonable. You can't handle all this financial stuff anymore. Look at this mess." He gestured at the papers. "You're 3 months behind on property taxes, your insurance is about to lapse, and there are medical bills coming that'll bankrupt you. Then I guess I'll have to figure it out, without your help." "You can't do this alone." I looked at my eldest son, this man who'd tried to steal my house, drain my bank account and convince doctors to let me die, and felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete emotional detachment from my own child. "Watch me." That night, after they left, I did something I hadn't done in 30 years. I went down to my basement, pried up the loose floorboard behind the old water heater, and retrieved the metal box Marcus had hidden there before he died. It was time to remind my sons that they weren't the only ones who knew how to play games with documents and legal papers. And what I found in that box would change everything. The metal box was heavier than I remembered. I sat on my basement floor at 2 a.m., my hands trembling as I lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in plastic bags to protect them from moisture, were documents I hadn't seen in 30 years. The first thing I pulled out was an envelope with my name written in Marcus's careful handwriting. "For Evelyn, open only in emergency. Emergency." If my own children trying to steal my house and let me die in a hospital didn't qualify as an emergency, nothing did. Inside the envelope was a letter dated just 2 weeks before Marcus died. "My dearest Evie, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong, and I'm no longer here to protect you. I pray you never need what's in this box, but I know how cruel the world can be to women alone. I've hidden things here that our boys don't know about, things that will keep you safe if anyone ever tries to take advantage of your kind heart. Never let anyone make you feel powerless. You are stronger than you know. All my love, Marcus P.S. Check behind the photo of our wedding day. There's more." Tears blurred my vision as I read his words. Even 30 years after his death, Marcus was still trying to take care of me. I set the letter aside and examined the other documents in the box. What I found made my hands shake for entirely different reasons. First, a life insurance policy I'd completely forgotten about. Not the small policy that had barely covered Marcus's funeral, but a second policy through his union. The payout was $50,000, and it had been sitting untouched in an investment account all these years, earning interest. $50,000. I wasn't broke, I wasn't helpless. I had been sitting on enough money to solve every financial problem that had been crushing me. But there was more. Next, the original deed to our house, notarized and stamped, showing that the property belonged solely to me. Marcus had made sure of that after we bought it. If anything happened to him, I would never be homeless. But the most shocking discovery was at the bottom of the box: bank statements and cancelled checks dating back to when the boys were teenagers. Documents showing every penny I'd given them over the years, not just the college tuition and business startup money I remembered, but everything. $500 for Darren's car repairs when he was 17, $200 for Ethan's spring break trip, $300 for Darren's girlfriend's birthday present, $800 for Ethan's apartment deposit, $2,000 for Darren's wedding expenses, $1,500 for Ethan's credit card debt. Page after page of cancelled checks, all signed by me, all for their benefit. Marcus had meticulously saved every receipt, every bank statement, every piece of evidence of my generosity. The total amount was staggering, over $127,000 across 30 years. Not including the college tuition or business startup money, this was just the small favours, the little emergencies I'd helped with. $127,000 of my money documented and provable. I remembered Marcus saying once, years ago, "Evie, you're too trusting. Keep records of everything you give those boys. Someday you might need proof." I'd thought he was being paranoid. Turns out he was being prophetic. But the real bombshell was behind our wedding photo, just like his letter had said. I climbed the basement stairs on shaky legs and went to the living room where our wedding picture hung above the fireplace. When I lifted it off the wall, there was an envelope taped to the back. Inside were documents that made my heart race, copies of paperwork showing that Marcus had inherited a small farm from his grandfather, a farm that was sold 3 years after his death. The sale proceeds, $73,000, had been automatically deposited into a trust account with my name on it. A trust account I'd never known existed. All this time, while I'd been working double shifts and denying myself basic necessities, there had been money sitting in accounts I didn't know about. Money that could have saved me years of struggle. But Marcus had been smart. The trust was structured so that the money couldn't be touched unless I specifically requested it, and only with proper legal documentation proving my identity. He'd protected me from my own generosity, and from anyone who might try to take advantage of me. I spent the rest of that night going through every document, every receipt, every bank statement. By dawn, I had a complete financial picture that was radically different from what I'd believed for 30 years. I wasn't the poor, struggling widow my sons thought I was. I had assets totaling over $123,000, plus a house that was legally and indisputably mine. More importantly, I had documentation proving that my sons owed me money, not the other way around. The next morning, Rosa knocked on my door with coffee and pastries. "You look different," she said, studying my face. "Better, stronger." "I feel like I've been living someone else's life," I told her. "Come sit down. I need to show you something." I spread the documents across my kitchen table, the same table where Darren and his lawyer had tried to intimidate me into signing over my house. Rosa's eyes widened as I explained what I'd found. "Evelyn, this changes everything. You're not helpless. You never were." "I know, and I think it's time my sons learned that too." "What are you going to do?" I picked up Marcus's letter and read his words again. "Never let anyone make you feel powerless. I'm going to get my stolen money back. I'm going to make sure they never try to take advantage of me again. And then I'm going to live the life I should have been living all along." Rosa smiled. "Your husband was a smart man." "He was, and he's still taking care of me, even now." That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I called a lawyer. Not Darren's intimidating Mr. Blackwood, but Jennifer Martinez, a family law attorney Rosa had recommended. Mrs. Carter, she said after reviewing my documents, you have an excellent case for financial exploitation by family members. The electronic transfers from your account without your permission constitute theft. The pressure to sign over your house could be considered elder abuse. What can I do about it? We can demand full restitution of the stolen money. We can get restraining orders if necessary. And we can make sure they never have access to your financial accounts again. How long will it take? She smiled. With documentation this thorough, not long at all. Your husband did excellent work protecting you. That evening I sat in my living room in my house, surrounded by proof of my own financial security, and felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: power. For 30 years I'd believed I was dependent on my son's goodwill. I'd believed I owed them everything. I'd believed I was a burden they were graciously carrying. All of it was lies. I was the one who'd been carrying them. I was the one who'd sacrificed. I was the one who'd given and given until I had nothing left to give. But now I knew the truth. I'd never been powerless. I'd just been too kind to use the power I had. My phone rang. It was Darren. Mom, we need to talk about those medical bills. The hospital is demanding payment and… No, I said calmly. What? We don't need to talk about anything, Darren. You and your brother have taken enough from me. Mum, what's gotten into you? You're acting crazy. Crazy. The same word abusers always use when their victims finally fight back. I'm acting sane for the first time in 30 years. Don't call me again unless you're ready to return the money you stole. Stole? Mum, you're being… I hung up. For the first time since Marcus died, I felt like myself again. Would you have fought back like this? Or would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace? Let me know in the comments, because tomorrow I was going to war. 3 weeks later, I walked into courtroom 4B of the family court building wearing my best dress. Not the old navy one from Ethan's wedding, but a new charcoal grey suit I'd bought with my own money. Money I'd forgotten I had. Jennifer Martinez, my attorney, squeezed my arm as we took our seats. Remember, Mrs. Carter, let them speak first. Give them enough rope to hang themselves. Across the aisle, Darren and Ethan sat with their lawyer, Mr. Blackwood. They'd filed a petition claiming I was mentally incompetent and needed a court-appointed guardian to manage my affairs. What they didn't know was that I'd filed a counter-petition for financial elder abuse, theft, and attempted fraud. The irony was delicious. Judge Patricia Hoffman entered the courtroom, and I felt a chill of recognition. She was about my age, with steel-grey hair and the no-nonsense demeanour of a woman who'd seen every kind of family betrayal imaginable. We're here today regarding the petition filed by Darren and Ethan Carter, requesting guardianship over their mother, Evelyn Carter, age 68, Judge Hoffman began. Mr. Blackwood, present your case. Blackwood stood, straightening his expensive tie. Your Honour, Mrs. Carter is clearly suffering from age-related cognitive decline. She's made poor financial decisions, forgotten to pay bills, and recently underwent a medical crisis that she's unable to manage properly. He gestured toward my sons. Her loving children are concerned for her welfare and believe court intervention is necessary to protect her from herself. Loving children. I almost snorted. She's isolated, living alone in a deteriorating property, and has become increasingly paranoid about family members who are only trying to help. Paranoid. There was that word again. Mr. Darren Carter, please take the stand. My eldest son walked to the witness box like he was accepting an award, confident, entitled, convinced he was about to win. Mr. Carter, Blackwood began, please describe your mother's recent behaviour. Darren adjusted his tie and spoke in the patronising tone he'd perfected over the years. Your Honour, my mother has become increasingly erratic. She forgets to pay bills, she's made poor financial decisions, and she's become hostile toward family members who are trying to help her. Can you give specific examples? Last month she forgot to pay her electric bill and the power was almost shut off. She called me confused about her bank statement, unable to understand basic financial information, and when I offered to help manage her property taxes, she became violent and threw us out of her house. Violent. I'd asked them to leave my own home, and that was violence. She's clearly not capable of managing her own affairs anymore, Darren continued. She needs someone responsible to make decisions for her. Someone responsible. Like him. Judge Hoffman made notes. Mr. Carter, what is your financial relationship with your mother? Darren shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry, Your Honor. Has your mother provided financial support to you over the years? Well, yes, but that's what mothers do. She helped with college, some business expenses. How much money has she given you? I don't have exact figures, but approximately. Darren looked at Blackwood, who nodded encouragingly. Maybe 20,000–30,000 over the years? It was all voluntary. She wanted to help. 20 to 30,000. He was off by about $100,000. Mr. Ethan Carter, please take the stand. My younger son looked nervous as he walked to the witness box. Good. He should be nervous. Mr. Carter, do you agree with your brother's assessment of your mother's mental state? Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. She's different lately, more confrontational. Different how? She used to be so agreeable, so willing to help. Now she questions everything, demands documentation for things she used to trust us with. Demands documentation. Like that was unreasonable. She's become suspicious of family members who've only ever tried to support her, Ethan continued, gaining confidence. She accused us of stealing from her, which is ridiculous. Everything we've taken has been with her permission. Everything they've taken? He'd just admitted to taking my money. Judge Hoffman leaned forward. Mr. Carter, you said everything you've taken. What exactly have you taken from your mother? Ethan's face went white. I meant everything she's given us, voluntarily, including the recent electronic transfers from her bank account. The courtroom went dead silent. Ethan looked like a deer caught in headlights. Your Honor, Blackwood interrupted, my clients are not on trial here. The issue is Mrs. Carter's competency. Actually, Mr. Blackwood, competency is very much related to one's ability to manage financial affairs and protect oneself from exploitation. Continue, Mr. Carter. Ethan was sweating now. The transfers. Darren said she had authorized them. She was confused about her finances and we were just trying to help. So you facilitated unauthorized transfers from your mother's account? No, I mean, she was confused. Darren had power of attorney. Mr. Carter, Judge Hoffman's voice turned ice cold. Did your mother ever sign a power of attorney document? Ethan looked desperately at Darren, who was frantically shaking his head. I'm not sure. Judge Hoffman made more notes, and I could see the storm clouds gathering in her expression. Mrs. Carter, she said, turning to me, please take the stand. I walked to the witness box on legs that felt stronger with every step. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward. Mrs. Carter, have you been experiencing cognitive decline? No, Your Honor. I've been experiencing financial abuse. Jennifer stood. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibits A through Z, documents that will clearly demonstrate Mrs. Carter's mental competency and reveal the true nature of this family dynamic. She approached the bench with Marcus's metal box worth of evidence. Exhibit A, Mrs. Carter's complete medical records, including a recent cognitive assessment performed by Dr. Sarah Chen, a geriatric psychiatrist. The assessment shows Mrs. Carter functioning at full mental capacity with no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. Judge Hoffman examined the documents. Continue. Exhibit B. Bank records showing unauthorized electronic transfers totaling $3,200 from Mrs. Carter's account to accounts controlled by her sons. Darren's lawyer objected. Your Honor, those transfers were made without my knowledge or consent, I said firmly. I never authorized anyone to access my bank account. Jennifer continued. Exhibits C through M, 30 years of cancelled checks, bank statements, and receipts documenting over $127,000 in financial support Mrs. Carter provided to her sons, including college tuition, business startup funds, and numerous personal expenses. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Even Judge Hoffman looked surprised at the number. Exhibit N. Documentation of Mrs. Carter's actual financial assets, including a life insurance payout and trust fund she was unaware of, totaling over $123,000. Your Honor, Blackwood interrupted desperately, the amount of money is irrelevant to the question of mental competency. Judge Hoffman fixed him with a stare that could have frozen hell. Mr. Blackwood, the ability to manage one's finances and protect oneself from exploitation is directly relevant to competency. Continue, Ms. Martinez. Exhibit O. The deed to Mrs. Carter's home, showing sole ownership in her name. Jennifer placed the deed on the evidence table. Your Honor, Mrs. Carter's sons attempted to pressure her into signing over this property by claiming she was mentally incompetent. They brought a lawyer to her home and threatened guardianship proceedings if she didn't comply. Is this true, Mrs. Carter? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Blackwood came to my house with Darren and told me I needed to sign over my deed for tax purposes. When I refused, Darren threatened to have me declared incompetent. Judge Hoffman turned to Blackwood, and her expression was thunderous. Mr. Blackwood, did you participate in pressuring this woman to sign over her property? Blackwood's expensive composure finally cracked. Your Honor, it was a legitimate estate planning discussion. Did you threaten guardianship proceedings if she didn't comply? The threat of incompetency proceedings is sometimes necessary to help elderly clients understand. Understand what? Judge Hoffman's voice boomed through the courtroom. That you would use the legal system to steal her home. The courtroom erupted. Darren jumped to his feet. Your Honor, you don't understand. She was going to lose everything. We were trying to protect. Sit down, Judge Hoffman commanded. Mr. Carter, you will not speak unless spoken to. She turned back to me. Mrs. Carter, is there anything else you'd like the court to know? I thought about the hospital room, about Darren telling doctors not to save me, about 30 years of taking care of children who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. Your Honor, 3 weeks ago, I was in the hospital having emergency heart surgery. My son Darren told the doctors not to save me because it would be too expensive. He said it was my time to go. A gasp went through the courtroom. Judge Hoffman's face went white. He told medical professionals not to perform life-saving surgery on his own mother. Yes, Your Honor, in front of witnesses. Judge Hoffman looked at Darren like he was something she'd scraped off her shoe. Mr. Carter, is this true? Darren's face was red with panic. Your Honor, that's taken out of context. The medical bills would have bankrupted her. I was thinking of her financial future. You were thinking of her death, Mr. Carter. The judge turned to her clerk. Please note that I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for possible criminal charges of elder abuse and attempted fraud. She looked back at Darren and Ethan, who were both pale as ghosts. As for the guardianship petition, it is denied. Mrs. Carter has demonstrated clear mental competency and sound financial judgment. In fact, she has demonstrated better judgment than either of her sons. She paused, letting her words sink in. Furthermore, I am granting Mrs. Carter's counterpetition. Darren and Ethan Carter are ordered to immediately return all funds taken from their mother's accounts, plus interest and penalties. Total restitution, $5,000. But Your Honor, Darren started. I'm not finished. Judge Hoffman slammed her gavel. Both defendants are hereby restrained from contacting Mrs. Carter or coming within 500 feet of her property without her express written consent. The gavel came down again like thunder. Court adjourned. As people filed out of the courtroom, Darren approached my table, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over, Mum. You've made a huge mistake. Judge Hoffman hadn't left yet. Mr. Carter, you are in violation of my restraining order. Bailiff, please escort these men from the building. As my sons were led away, Darren turned back one last time. You'll regret this when you're old and alone. I looked at my son. This man who'd tried to steal my home, drain my bank account, and convinced doctors to let me die, and felt nothing but pity. I'm already old, I called after him, and I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who wish I was dead. Outside the courthouse, Jennifer shook my hand. Mrs. Carter, that was the most clear-cut case of elder abuse I've ever seen. You should be proud of yourself for fighting back. Proud? When was the last time anyone had told me to be proud of myself? As I walked to my car in the courthouse parking lot, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 30 years. Complete and total freedom. For the first time since Marcus died, I belonged to no one but myself. 6 months later, I was sitting in a cafe in Rome, watching the sunrise paint the ancient city in shades of gold and pink. Rome. The city Marcus and I had dreamed of visiting together but never could afford. The city I thought I'd never see because I'd spent 30 years giving away every spare dollar to children who saw me as a bank account. But here I was, at 69 years old, finally living the life I should have been living all along. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. The first few weeks after the court hearing were the hardest. I'd come home to an empty house that felt different somehow. Not lonely. I'd been lonely for years while surrounded by people who didn't care about me. This was peaceful, clean, mine. The first thing I did was change every lock on every door. The locksmith, a kind man named Tony, didn't ask questions when I told him I wanted to make sure no one else had keys to my home. Fresh start, he asked as he installed the last deadbolt. Something like that. The second thing I did was go to the bank and close every account that Darren or Ethan had ever touched. I opened new accounts at a different bank entirely, with passwords they could never guess and security measures they could never bypass. The restitution money came through within a week of the court order. $5,000 wasn't everything they'd stolen, but it was symbolic. For the first time in 30 years, money was flowing from them to me instead of the other way around. But the real game changer was accessing the accounts Marcus had left me. The life insurance money, the trust fund, the farm sale proceeds. Suddenly I wasn't just surviving, I was financially secure. For the first time since Marcus died, I could breathe. The third thing I did was something I'd never done in my entire adult life. I made decisions based solely on what I wanted, not what someone else needed. I wanted to fix my house, not because I had to. Not because someone was pressuring me, but because I deserved to live somewhere beautiful. I hired contractors to repair the roof, replace the old furnace, and paint every room in colours I loved. I wanted new furniture. The old couch where I'd sat countless nights worrying about bills was replaced with a comfortable armchair where I could read books and drink tea in peace. Most importantly, I wanted companionship, but on my terms. Rosa had told me about 3 college students who were looking for a place to rent. They're good kids, she said. Pre-med students, quiet, respectful, and they could use the help with housing costs. I'd never considered renting out rooms before, but the idea appealed to me. Young people in my house again, but this time people who paid me instead of taking from me. People who were grateful for my help instead of entitled to it. Maya, David, and Sophie moved in during the spring. They were polite, hard-working, and genuinely appreciative. When Maya's grandmother died, she brought me flowers and thanked me for letting her cry in my kitchen. When David passed a difficult exam, he celebrated by cooking dinner for all of us. When Sophie got accepted to medical school, she hugged me and said I was like the grandmother she wished she'd had. They made me feel useful again, not as someone to be exploited, but as someone with wisdom and kindness to offer. The rental income meant I never had to worry about money again. But more than that, having young people around reminded me that not all children grow up to be selfish. Some actually know how to be grateful. As summer approached, I made the biggest decision of all. I was going to travel. Marcus and I had planned to see Italy after he retired. We'd saved brochures and talked about riding gondolas in Venice, seeing the Vatican, eating real Italian pasta under Mediterranean skies. His death had shelved those dreams for 30 years. But now, at 69, I decided it was time to honour the life we'd planned together. I booked a 3-week trip to Italy. Solo travel for a woman my age felt terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. "Are you sure you want to go alone?" Rosa asked, as she drove me to the airport. "I've been alone for 30 years, I told her. "The only difference is now I'm alone in beautiful places." Italy changed me in ways I hadn't expected. Walking through the ancient streets of Rome, I realised I'd spent so long being defined by other people, as Marcus's wife, as Darren and Ethan's mother, as the woman who cleaned offices and emptied bedpans, that I'd forgotten who Evelyn actually was. In Rome, I was just a woman exploring a new city. In Venice, I was just someone enjoying a gondola ride. In Florence, I was just a person admiring art that had existed for centuries before my problems and would exist for centuries after. I sent postcards to Rosa, to Maya, David, and Sophie. I didn't send any to my sons, though I thought about them often. Not with anger anymore, but with something closer to pity. They'd had a mother who would have done anything for them, and they'd traded her for money that was never really theirs anyway. They'd chosen greed over love, and now they had neither. Now, on my last night in Rome, I sat in that cafe watching the sunrise and thinking about the journey that had brought me here. From the hospital room where my son told doctors not to save me, to this moment of perfect peace in a foreign city I was exploring on my own terms. I thought about Marcus, and I could almost hear his voice. "You did it, Evie. You saved yourself." When I returned home, I was different, stronger, more confident. I'd proven to myself that I could navigate foreign countries, manage my own finances, and build a life based on my own choices. The students welcomed me back with homemade cookies and stories about their summer internships. My house felt like a home again, filled with laughter and purpose, but this time centered around me rather than in spite of me. I started volunteering at a local senior centre, helping other elderly people recognise the signs of financial abuse. It turned out my story wasn't unique. Family members exploiting ageing parents is more common than anyone wants to admit. The hardest part, I told a support group of seniors who'd been taken advantage of by their own children, is realising that the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones you needed protection from. But I also told them what I'd learned. You are not powerless. You are not too old to fight back, and you deserve better than people who only value you for what you can give them. Some of them listened. Some of them found the strength to set boundaries, to seek legal help, to choose their own well-being over their children's convenience. Others weren't ready. Change is hard at any age, but especially when you've spent decades in patterns of self-sacrifice. I understood both responses. 6 months ago, I'd been where they were, convinced that love meant enduring abuse, that being a good mother meant never saying no, that my children's needs would always matter more than my own survival. Now I knew better. Love without respect is just exploitation. Generosity without appreciation is just enabling, and sacrifice without reciprocation is just martyrdom. As for Darren and Ethan, I heard through Rosa that they'd both filed appeals of the court's decision. Their lawyer had quit, and they were representing themselves now. The appeals were denied. I also heard that Darren's construction business was struggling without access to my money, and that Ethan's marriage was having problems. Apparently, financial stress reveals people's true character. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, but I felt no obligation to rescue them either. They'd made their choices. I'd made mine. On my 70th birthday, exactly 1 year after the kitchen birthday party where they'd treated me like hired help, I threw myself a party. Not a big celebration, just dinner with Rosa, my 3 student renters, and a few friends I'd made at the senior centre. We ate cake I'd bought for myself, drank wine I'd chosen, and toasted to second chances and new beginnings. Maya gave a little speech to Evelyn, who taught us that it's never too late to choose yourself. As I blew out the candles on my own cake, surrounded by people who actually cared about me, I made a wish that every person who's been taken advantage of by their own family finds the strength to fight back. Because here's what I learned. Children are not entitled to your sacrifice. Love without respect is just exploitation, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's selfishness. I learned that being alone is not the same as being lonely, that financial independence is worth more than family approval, and that it's never too late to start living for yourself. Most importantly, I learned that the person you become when you stop trying to please everyone else is usually the person you were meant to be all along. If your own child told the doctor not to save you, would you forgive them or walk away forever? Tell me in the comments, because I know exactly which choice leads to freedom.